Okay, everybody. Hello and uh, good night. Tonight, I'd like to read a story about titled "The Story of Yes and No." Before woods were woods, a boy named Yes lived in a small village in a small kingdom. Yes was good at everything. He was the best, smartest, and most liked person in his village. Yes had a brother, and his name was No. No was jealous of his brother because he was not much good at anything himself. Whenever the villagers asked No for help, he refused because he didn't like people very much. Whenever someone asked Yes for a favor, he would gladly help, and he secretly didn't mind the fact that it irritated No when he did. One day, Yes and No's father, Okay, went on a long journey and he left his two sons in charge of all the animals. Yes, took good care of the great Gak and the Ix and the three Tioyok. Keep in mind, my dear friend, that the Gak, Ik, and three Tioyok were very old animals, so you might know them by different names today. No didn't want to be bothered with the boring tasks involved with taking care of the animals. So instead of helping his brother, No went down to the lake and threw rocks into the water. A few days after his father left, Yes asked his brother to watch the three Teo Yok while he went to find some food to eat. Instead of doing what Yes asked, No lay down, shut his eyes, and forgot about the Yok. It just so happened that the king had a personal road nearby, and he travels on it often. So often that when the three Teoyok wandered onto the road, the king's carriage was passing by and had to swerve to avoid hitting it. The king was thrown from the carriage and fell to the ground and hurt himself. The king demanded to know why a tree Teoyok had been allowed on his road and asked all the villagers for an explanation. Yes was always honest, so he told the king the entire story. The king thought for a moment, and then he came up with an idea that he was quite happy with. Yes and No were to work in the castle as his personal assistant as punishment for what was later referred to as the worst three Teoyok and carriage accidents in the kingdom history. The king needed help with many things around the castle because a king cannot be bothered with the daily tasks involved with running a kingdom. However, soon after his decision about the two brothers, the king realized that only Yes would be of any use to him as a servant. Whenever the king asked No to bring him anything, it would get thrown away, broken, or eaten without exception. The king was quite sure that No was the worst servant in the entire world. The brothers' most important task was to help pick the food for a grand party that the king was throwing later that night. Cooks from all over the kingdom lined up at the castle's gate to offer the king their food for the party. Of course, the king could not go and grab the food himself, so he asked yes and no to do it for him. The first cook came up the gate and yelled to the gatekeeper, "I bring my delicious Ugberry pie for the king's banquet." The king heard this and thought that Ugberry pie would be perfect for such an event, and he would love to eat the leftovers. He didn't want anything to happen to the Ugberry pie, so he yelled, "Yes!" and then asked him to get fetch it. Asked him to go fetch it. The next cook stepped up to the gate. "I offer the king gurkey soup," he said. The king didn't like the gurkey soup very much, and he knew just how to get rid of it. "No!" he yelled, and then sent No out to retrieve the soup. No dropped the soup before the king could even smell it. This went on for hours. If the king liked a dish, he would yell yes, and it would be included in the night feast. If he did not, everyone would hear a loud no, and the dish would be destroyed moments later by a servant with a very bad attitude. Pretty soon, this started catching on around the kingdom, for if a king does something, his royal subjects are never far behind. If they didn't want a second scoop of potatoes, they would say no. And if they liked what someone was offering, they would say yes. And ever seen that day in a small village, in a small kingdom, yes has meant yes, and no has meant no. This small kingdom also happens to be the birthplace of yes and no cousins. Please and thanks. But that is another story for another time. Thank you and see you again tomorrow night. Thank you. Bye.